Have you ever wondered why World War I was also called the war to end all wars? This global conflict, which erupted in 1914, was a watershed moment in human history, involving over 30 nations and forever altering the geopolitical landscape. Its magnitude and the unprecedented death toll led many to believe that its horrors would deter future conflicts, hence the moniker, the war to end all wars. Yet, the irony of this statement is not lost on us. The war did not end all wars. Instead, it sowed the seeds for World War II and numerous other conflicts. This paradox highlights the human capacity for resilience, but also our propensity for destruction. The global involvement, the scale of devastation, and the lasting impact. All these aspects underscore the significance of World War I. So, why do we call such a brutal conflict the war to end all wars? Let's dive into the brutal realities of this war. Imagine living in a narrow, muddy ditch for years on end, surrounded by the constant threat of death. That was the reality for countless soldiers during World War I, immersed in the unforgiving conditions of trench warfare. Trenches were not simply holes in the ground, they were elaborate systems, dug deep into the earth, designed to protect soldiers from enemy fire. Yet, they were far from a safe haven. They were often filled with water, turning the bottom into a muddy, slippery mess. The soldiers living in these trenches were plagued with a myriad of diseases, from trench foot to typhus, and even the dreaded Spanish flu. Sleep was a luxury few could afford in the trenches. The constant shell fire, the whizzing bullets, the fear of an imminent attack, all these factors contributed to an incredibly high-stress environment. This led to a significant psychological impact on the soldiers, with many suffering from shell shock, a term coined during the war to describe the severe emotional trauma experienced by the soldiers. In between these trenches lay the ominously named No Man's Land. It was a desolate expanse, filled with barbed wire, shell holes, and the bodies of fallen soldiers. To venture into this land was to invite death. It was a place where hope withered just as quickly as the men who dared to cross it. The psychological toll of the war was not limited to the battlefield. Many soldiers returned home with severe mental scars, forever haunted by the horrors they had witnessed. The constant fear, the lack of sleep, the inescapable stench of death and decay, all these elements combined to create a living nightmare. Trench warfare was not just about the physical battle, it was a test of endurance, of mental fortitude. It was about surviving the harshest of conditions, the most extreme of circumstances. It was a battle not just against the enemy, but against the very elements themselves. Trench warfare was a living hell, a brutal and grim reality of World War I. Now imagine an enemy you can't see, but one that can kill you just as effectively. In the midst of the Great War, a new and unseen enemy emerged on the battlefield, one that was as deadly as it was invisible. This was the era of chemical warfare, an innovation that forever transformed the nature of conflict. The first widespread use of chemical warfare was during World War I. Among the verdant fields and muddy trenches of Europe, soldiers began to witness an eerie sight. Clouds of smoke, not from gunfire or explosions, but something far more sinister. This was the introduction of poison gases, an unseen assailant that instilled terror in the hearts of even the bravest soldiers. Several types of gases were employed, each with its own horrifying impact. Tear gas, the mildest among them, caused severe eye and respiratory pain, disorienting soldiers and leaving them vulnerable. Chlorine gas, a more potent weapon, was known for its distinctive greenish-yellow hue and pungent smell. A whiff of this gas could cause a burning sensation in the throat and chest, leading to suffocation. But perhaps the most feared of all was mustard gas. Odorless and taking effect hours after exposure, it caused blistering of the skin, damage to the eyes and lungs, and in severe cases, death. Its effects were not immediate, adding a psychological aspect to its physical damage. The use of these gases was not just about causing physical harm, it was about inducing fear, breaking morale, and creating chaos among enemy ranks. The mere sight of a gas cloud could trigger a panic. Soldiers would scramble to put on their gas masks, a task that was not easy under the stress of an ongoing attack. Chemical warfare represented a new level of brutality. It was a cruel and inhumane way to inflict damage, one that left lasting physical and psychological scars on its victims. The introduction of these deadly gases truly made World War I a war unlike any other. The introduction of chemical warfare brought a new level of fear and brutality to the battlefield. The brutality of World War I wasn't confined to the trenches. It extended to the seas and the skies. The war was a catalyst for change, pushing boundaries and forcing innovation in the name of survival. The seas became a battlefield, with the introduction of submarines revolutionizing naval warfare. The German U-boats, silent and deadly, prowled the depths, launching surprise attacks on unsuspecting ships. This new form of warfare was terrifying and effective, putting merchant vessels and warships alike at risk. The sinking of the Lusitania, a passenger ship by a German submarine in 1915, stands as a chilling testament to the destructive capabilities of these underwater predators. The war in the air was equally transformative. The skies were no longer just for the birds. They became a new frontier for battle. The development of military aircraft moved at a breakneck pace. These aerial duels between fighter pilots, or aces as they were known, became an iconic image of the war. Figures like Manfred von Richthofen, the infamous Red Baron, emerged from these deadly ballets in the sky. The impact of these new forms of warfare was profound. They changed the very nature of combat, forcing armies to rethink their strategies and shifting the focus from pure trench warfare to a more complex, multi-dimensional approach. The submarine and the fighter plane, these were the game changers, the wild cards that turned the odds in favor of the side that wielded them effectively. The war at sea and in the air opened new, deadly frontiers in combat. They brought the war out of the trenches and into the vast expanse of the oceans and the skies, forever changing the face of warfare and underscoring the brutal realities of World War I. The guns fell silent in 1918, but the impact of World War I resonated for decades. World War I, also known as the Great War, left an indelible mark on the world stage. The political landscape was forever altered. Empires crumbled, monarchies toppled, and new nations emerged from the ashes. The Russian Revolution of 1917 led to the rise of the Soviet Union, the first communist state, a development that would have far-reaching implications in the years to come. The Treaty of Versailles, designed to ensure peace, instead sowed the seeds of resentment, particularly in Germany, setting the stage for World War II. Beyond the political sphere, World War I had a profound economic impact. Europe, once the center of global economic activity, was left devastated. The cost of the war was astronomical, draining the economies of the warring nations. Rebuilding efforts required massive amounts of capital, leading to the rise of the United States as the world's leading economic power. The war also brought about significant social upheaval. Old societal norms were challenged. Women, having stepped into roles traditionally held by men during the war, began to assert their rights, leading to the women's suffrage movement. The war also accelerated technological advancements, forever changing the way wars were fought. The psychological impact of the war was equally profound. The brutality and the sheer scale of death and destruction led to a sense of disillusionment. The lost generation of writers and artists reflected this in their works, capturing the despair and the questioning of pre-war values. The shadow of World War I loomed large over the 20th century. Its impact is still felt today in our political systems, our economies, and our societal norms. It was a war that reshaped the world, for better and worse. World War I, the war to end all wars, ironically laid the groundwork for an even greater conflict. World War I was a brutal and transformative event in human history. It was a war that introduced us to the living hell of trench warfare, where soldiers spent countless hours in dire conditions. We witnessed the emergence of chemical warfare, an unseen enemy that brought about unprecedented levels of destruction and suffering. The war also extended to new frontiers, with battles fought not just on land, but also at sea and in the air. It was a war that forever changed the way conflicts would be fought. This Great War, as it was called, left an indelible mark on society, influencing generations and shaping the world as we know it today. The brutality of World War I, its innovations in warfare, and its enduring impact on society are all stark reminders of the horrific cost of global conflict. As we remember World War I, we are reminded of the horrific cost of global conflict. Until next time, keep exploring history with us. Check.